I'm Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you're listening to Hard Knock Life.
Well, it's the NOC in full color. You see me? The Hard Knock Life. Comics, movies, and TV. Yeah.
Welcome to Hard Knock Life. I'm Keith Chow.
I'm Brittany Monet.
Hi, I'm Dominic Ma.
Hey guys, we have a special guest co-host this week.
Hey, what's up?
She is a writer, host, producer. What do you not do? As I think is the right question. She hosts several podcasts, and one of my favorite podcasts of all time. May it rest in peace. Y tu Panta también. She is joining us on Hard Knock Life for the first time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. Welcome, Katrina Dennis.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. And yeah, I can't wait to break down this week with you.
I feel like we've collabed on so many things, but I can't believe this is the first time you've ever been on the podcast.
Right? We have coordinated events together, but we have not done a podcast together yet. Usually it's the other way around.
Yeah, and you have like 12 podcasts, so it was bound to happen.
Yeah, there's like a rotation, like I've got, oh God, I have like 3 right now. So, it's the fall season, things change.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for being on the podcast this week. There's a lot to get to. And one of the things that I know a lot of folks were probably wondering why we didn't cover last week was a tiny little indie movie trailer dropped right as I was posting the episode. And I can't believe it's only a month away. I'm talking about Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. We got the final official trailer before the release. And honestly, I kind of wish I didn't see it just because I feel like it gave away a lot more than I was hoping for. And then, like that first teaser that was released a few months back, the one you guys broke down, actually, I was already all in 100%. Like we got a little bit more story beats, but what were your first thoughts on the Wakanda Forever trailer? Let's start with our special guest, Katrina, and then we'll go around the table.
Well, I'm really excited for it. I'm already kind of preparing myself mentally to cry. There's just going to be a lot of tears. I'm already anticipating it. So I'm just going to make sure I don't go with heavy makeup on or anything like that. But I was really excited. I'm super excited about, because from the beginning, and this is my favorite thing about the Black Panther series and Legacy, is that from the beginning, even though the Black Panther was the central character, the women around him were the drivers of the story. And this trailer makes it very, very clear that even though, Namor is here and some stuff is going down, it's Queen Ramonda and the girls who are in charge here. And so I'm just really excited to see all of them again and see Namor cause chaos.
Yeah, speaking of the women, the big reveal at the end of the trailer, of course, was we finally saw who was teased at the end of the teaser, the new Black Panther. Brittany, there's a lot of debate about who the new Black Panther is. I don't understand why people are debating. It's kind of obvious to me, but what do you think about who's inside the Black Panther costume?
Well, I would assume, obviously, it has to be Shuri because, again, she held up production. And unless, that's what I had said before, unless she's not in the suit, then her not being vaccinated wouldn't hold up production that much. But it did. So obviously she is. I don't know. I feel like in terms of comics and following comics, it's obviously the right thing to do. But I feel like that, I don't know. I just, that whole her anti-vaxxing just still doesn't sit well with me. Like I've said before, because if Chadwick had, got healthy enough to come back to actually do Black Panther 2 and COVID was still a thing, she would have been putting him in danger. So I guess for me, it just feels I don't know. But maybe there's somebody else too in the suit. Not sure. Who knows? That could be a fake out,
Yeah,
it's not conclusive.
Yeah.
But probably a woman.
Well, it's definitely a woman.
Yes. It could be a different lady.
Folks are debating it's Nakia. Some people think it might be Ramonda in the suit. I mean, the obvious choice, of course, is that it's Shuri. Not only Letitia Wright out there doing all of the press, which is, to your point about the vaccination controversy, I'm surprised that she's on, Jimmy Fallon and whatever, but she's also central to the poster. The makeup, her war makeup from the first movie is on the mask of the cowl of the costume. So it's kind of if it ends up being Nakia, it'll be weird that it's everything else points to Shuri. But Dominic, what is your take on the trailer?
I know it's an outlying possibility, but I think Angela Bassett is really holding it down in these trailers. So it would be cool if she was Black Panther too. I mean, I just think she's doing good.
I mean, she's definitely taking the lead in terms of like pushing the story forward in the trailers, at least.
Yeah, man. The main thought I had from watching that trailer was, thank gosh that Ryan Coogler really loves comic books, because I'm a big Coogler fan, and he is really an actual comic book fan. From my understanding, he used to go to Dr. Comics Mr. Games over in Piedmont, a great local comic shop. And like, one of the things about Namor is like, he's one of the biggest like forces in the Marvel universe. And I think part of the reason we haven't seen him up till now is he's a little silly. Like, it's a little, he's a muscular dude in like, a green Speedo, and he's got little wings on his feet. Okay. It's one of those comic book things. It's a little bit strange. So,
and pointy ears. He's got pointy.
Yeah, pointy ears. And I just bring it up to say like, it's one of those things that could be done goofy, but because Coogler like really likes the comic book universe, I'm sure it'll be really great. I'm sure we'll believe in this guy with little ankle wings could be like, a serious threat, or at least a major force in the world.
Well, and I think one of the things that, to their credit, is that they were able to reinterpret Namor and the Atlanteans to fit not only in the MCU, but actually give it a real culture. We've talked in the past about how, we give props to DC for casting Jason Momoa as Aquaman. But at the end of the day, Atlantis, they didn't actually incorporate, Polynesian culture into Atlantis, right? Atlantis was still a bunch of white people. It just happened to be that like Nicole Kidman married, Tamara Morrison, and that's how we got a Polynesian Aquaman. It's got nothing to do with the culture of Atlantis. Whereas here, they've completely reinvented Atlantis to represent Aztec, Mayan culture and place Namor firmly in that. Katrina, like, one of the things that's kind of cool about Wakanda Forever and this new version of Namor is that he truly is an indigenous superhero on Indigenous Peoples Day, by the way, right? Like, we're getting a real indigenous, we're reinterpreting a classic Marvel character into an indigenous Latino character.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see, like, I'm excited for the movie, but I'm excited for the inevitable special that'll come out, because I really feel like, and hopefully I'm not wrong on this, I feel like there was a lot of like you said, attention to detail and care that was put into how these cultures were presented. And I'm excited to see exactly how much that was.
If anyone, like Ryan Coogler and the folks behind Black Panther are probably the right folks to trust to make sure that there's care and attention to detail.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I feel like that reflection is really, like, I think about what it was like to see Wakanda for the first time, and like how, like, you felt people around you like going like, that's familiar to me, or like, having that moment of like immersion in their culture. And like, just to think about what that's going to do for people who like share the same lineages as Namor and Tenoch, like, it's really, really exciting. I think, like, I'm really excited to go to this movie and feel the audience vibrate.
Well, it's less than a month away, which is wild, because it's always like, part of it is that there's so much content that it kind of flattens the time between things, right? Like waiting between like Avengers and Civil War and stuff like that. Even Infinity War and Endgame, it felt like forever to get between point A to point B. Like, there was one movie in between Infinity War and Endgame, but like, since, what was the last one? Doctor Strange, was that the last one? It's like, there's so much. But since Doctor Strange, we've had, Ms. Marvel, we've had Moon Knight, we've had She-Hulk, Werewolf by Night. We're having all this content, and now we're getting Wakanda Forever. It almost feels like it's a little overwhelming. Brittany, as someone who is ingesting all of this Marvel content as much as the rest of us, like, can you believe we're less than a month away from Wakanda Forever?
No, I just feel like, because there wasn't like, I feel like there's a different to this movie, and I think it has a lot also Joe Chadwick passing, that doesn't seem to have the same like media like campaign or sort of, so that's why it's still like, oh yeah, that movie is coming out like, this year. And then I was like, oh, this movie is coming out in a couple months. Oh, this movie is coming out next month. Like, it's just so crazy that it's like now it's here. But yeah, I'm excited for this, obviously. And I've been saying Neymar, I can't wait.
You get a little hot there, aren't you, Brittany? You fan yourself a little bit. I think, Dominic, when the first Black Panther movie came out, I mean, there was this seemingly like wave of, I mean, hype is not even the right word, just anticipation. Like to Brittany's point, I don't know that the marketing's muted. I mean, I feel like I see Wakanda Forever stuff everywhere. Of course, the trailers. Like I said, I kind of wish I didn't see the trailer because I want to just go in as, unspoiled as possible, right? But do you think there's a reason why there may be a more muted hype train for Wakanda Forever this time around? Maybe is it because they're just, it's hard to hype a movie that's filled with so much like, grief still.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting thing because, I mean, well, for one thing, we're all so saturated with Marvel stuff now. And I mean, like, I would hope that people really like have a time travel moment and place themselves back in the moment when Black Panther 1 came out, because it was really a shift. It would really change the whole game, at the risk of using a cliche expression, and meant so much for people who are both comic fans and Black people, and just people who wanted to see this genre like elevated to do, something transformative. And we've had time to get cynical about it, right? Like several years later, just like, there's so much Marvel stuff. We had like a, pandemic and a terrible, disastrous president and a zillion other things to distract us from, the memory of what that movie really did. And I think it'll come back to people because I just have faith in Coogler as sort of a mad scientist to figure out how to, tap into that lightning in the bottle that he got the first time and bring it to a new place. And again, so much at stake, so ambitious, not just like, sequel aliens come to like fight Black Panther again. Like we're talking about representing a new culture. We're talking about the unprecedented thing of trying to go on without the lead actor. Like normal Marvel movies don't have these kind of factors, but somehow the level of ambition makes it, I think we'll return to that moment in some sense. This is my opinion.
Yeah. The other thing that you mentioned, thank God for Ryan Coogler. And I think there was a story that came out over the last week where he talked about like there was a moment after Chadwick passed where he was like, I can't do this without him.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. Any normal person would be like.
Right. And Chadwick was Ryan's muse, right? Like the way they worked off each other, was that's like, I couldn't do this movie without Chadwick Boseman. And whatever nut they cracked to get this story and get Ryan back on board, to your point, that the ambition of that. But, and it goes to like a topic we've discussed numerous times on this podcast about the quote unquote controversy about not recasting Chadwick Boseman. Like there are still folks out there who were like, it's unfair to kill off T'Challa just because the actor died. Right.
But I mean, in this case, that's the one thing they had going for them. The Black Panther story is uniquely able to deal with this problem. I mean, it's a mantle. Open to this alternative, someone else.
I mean, that's how T'Challa gets it in Civil War, right? Yeah. T'Chaka dies, and then it gets passed down to T'Challa. And I think, but I understand the point. I think, as we've mentioned, it's the gift and the curse of a cinematic universe, right? Like a character as important as Black Panther, you can't just swap out the guy. This is not an Edward Norton, Mark Ruffalo thing. Like that movie didn't,
not quite the same.
You know what I mean? Like that movie didn't succeed, and folks were like, fine, we can recast the Hulk because no one cares about the Hulk. But if they had recast Chris Evans before Civil War, that movie wouldn't have meant anything. It would have been, there was a movie where they recast the guy right before they fought. It was called Batman versus Superman. Like Christian Bale was Batman for 10 years, and then all of a sudden they dumped Ben Affleck, and then like people are like, we don't care. This is not the Batman we've watched for 10 years. That's what would have happened if they had recast Chris Evans or Robert Downey Jr. before Civil War. And because Chadwick Boseman was so tied to T'Challa, you can't just go, okay, let's just drop a new actor. Let's just drop John David Washington and now he's Black Panther. Like, one, it's not like Chadwick Boseman quit. It's not like, oh, it wasn't successful, let's recast. He died a tragic death. You know, like, to Dominic's point, how do you move on from that without, you know, because the Marvel Cinematic Universe in particular is so tied to the personalities of the people playing the characters, not just the characters aren't the thing in Marvel, at least up till now. I mean, this is why Hugh Jackman is coming back as Wolverine and Patrick Stewart comes back as Professor X. Like, the actor is so associated with the roles that it'll take time at least.
But I mean, the beauty of it is, again, they don't have to just drop another person in there. Again, it's a mantle that can be passed, and the whole idea of Wakanda Forever persevering through great tragedy and setback, I mean, it's kind of strengthened by the weight of the problem. So for that reason, that reason, I don't totally agree with that analogy, because I think the idea of passing on to the next Black Panther, despite whatever happens, whatever life throws at you, is it's built in, and I think Coogler will take it to like an even more.
If anything, I'm playing devil's advocate, or at least, like, you know, explaining the perspective of the people who are upset that T'Challa isn't recast.
I mean, I get it, but I think that also because of the tight relationship, obviously, that cast had, I feel like it would just, even if it's something that they said we'll do it later on, I think at the time it would be insensitive, because, like, you know, it just doesn't make sense. And I feel like for a lot of other people, they just want that character, when it's like, well, this is someone, like, you know, they worked with and they bonded with, and it's different. Like, you know, I mean, yeah, it's all like, if anyone who's ever had like coworkers who, like, you know, passed away or just transferred where you don't see them anymore, and when you have the new people come in, even if, like, you're kind of like, oh, it's weird, it's awkward, because then the vibe is off, and you're like, you know, and you're still like missing that other person who was there. So it's very a weird thing. So I think people don't realize how awkward it would have been to just have someone else now as like T'Challa.
And I think, you know, a lot of the argument is that because, to your point, Black Panther is such an important character, it was such a cultural moment, that you're almost robbing us of that, you know, by not having T'Challa, the Black Panther, front and center. And I am not equating people who feel that way, because I get it with this next thing I'm going to say. But there's also the contingency of folks, as you mentioned earlier, like, the women of Wakanda are who are propelling the story forward. And, you know, there's some folks on the internet, maybe they frequent a website called what's the website? The
Intelligentsia.
Maybe the Hulk King himself, who complain about the MCU, are going to have some things to say about a woman Black Panther, you know, and clearly it's the same people who've never read comics, because of,
those people do not know where any of this is coming from.
But they're the same people, since we're talking about intelligentsia, who are up in arms about She-Hulk, and, you know, She-Hulk is using that as like the plot, right? Like, you know, Chad's on the internet, and we just had, like, I think the best episode of She-Hulk ever, in my opinion. How are we feeling about Daredevil's rebirth in the fully now in the MCU?
It was great. I think everyone knows by now that I just love Charlie Cox. So it was wonderful. From the moment he walked in court, I was just like, oh yeah, this is everything. I don't know. I liked it. He was more relaxed in this, and some people like, oh, he's not depressed. I'm like, you know, it's okay for people to kind of maybe heal from their trauma and be in a better place. I mean, you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't know. It was fun. I love that he had his own little walk of shame, and it was great. It was beautiful.
Walk of shame. Funny.
Well, I think people who are like, oh, he's not depressed are assuming that having relations like stops your depression. It doesn't. But he's probably still depressed, but he had a really good day. Like, let him have it. Like,
exactly.
You know, he just got a new suit. He got to like do the hanky-panky with the She-Hulk. Like, let him have a win for once, you know?
And, like, are people forgetting, like, Matt's one of the horniest dudes in the MCU. Like, it's not like he's a chaste dude. You know what I mean? Like,
Wolverine called him a himbo.
How many hookups has he had?
Out of envy.
Well, Dominic, you are one of the biggest fans of the Netflix Daredevil series. How do you feel about his entry into the MCU?
Oh, I love seeing Daredevil again. Yeah, I mean, I have my issues with She-Hulk, and I sort of zeroed in on what my problem is with the She-Hulk series. Maybe I'll get into that rant later. But as far as Daredevil coming back, I love that it was in a lighter romantic comedy kind of vein. And I just love that he shows up and they have a ridiculous superhero and superhero fight, because that's honestly, that's the kind of thing Daredevil does. Daredevil's clearly overmatched by She-Hulk. Daredevil's overmatched by almost anyone who has superpowers. But that's like some Daredevil shit right there. He goes in when the odds are really bad. Like Spider-Man, it's like, oh, 6 dudes with like high-tech weapons. Yeah, I'm gonna go over there and fight with them. I'm gonna fight the freaking Hulk. You know, in the comics, Daredevil does many bad decisions. Like he fights Ultron. Like at one point, he did fight the Hulk, but that's just the kind of hero shit that he does, and I liked it.
One thing that I appreciated about and yeah, of course, the Netflix show was great, but it was also, it limited itself to be a grounded, vigilante kind of like the Nolan Batman Begins kind of style, where like everything has to be explained, everything has to adhere to actual physics. And what was great about seeing Charlie Cox as Daredevil in She-Hulk is that he got to be comic book Daredevil. Like he got to flip off of buildings and use his billy club as like giant nunchucks and like stuff you would never have seen in the Netflix show. Like if that show had gone 10 seasons, you would never see Matt Murdock doing a somersault off of a building or giving legal advice while punching goons. Like that would not happen in the Netflix show.
Yeah, it was a gag.
Because the thing about Daredevil too is that the Netflix show borrowed heavily from Frank Miller's run on Daredevil. But Frank Miller was not the only person to ever write Daredevil.
Right.
It's the same, it's the Batman thing, right? Like people love adapting Frank Miller's Batman. That ain't the only Batman. Batman can have fun. Batman
Shout out to
can
Ann Nocenti's run on Daredevil. She was a really good Daredevil writer for a while.
But Matt he has fun. He does quip when he's, punching dudes. Like that's an aspect of Daredevil that we got. So again, going back to the people who complain on the internet, what happened to my Daredevil? It's like, well, read some more comics then,
How do we feel about the threat that reveals itself to She-Hulk at the end? Looks like a kind of big doxing villain that I think we were like got hints that this was where it was going for her, climactic problem, but I was curious what people thought about that.
I figured they eventually would play a part, but I was like, is this going to go to a season 2 type of thing? Because I feel like there wasn't a short like through thread for like where maybe
That's sort of
who the big bad would be, and then obviously they played it off at the end, and I was like, oh okay. But so much like men to ruin a woman's reputation, and then the police aren't doing anything to the people who are actually causing the damage, but the woman who's upset about it is the one who's like getting in trouble, and like it felt very real life. I don't know, but I'm interested to see where this goes and how deep these people are, if they're like kind of serious, like certain Trumpy type of things.
Yeah. So there's something I want to talk about, but I also just don't want to bring too much attention to it. But there's like this particular villain is like he's based off of like a YouTuber or YouTubers that is, it's already kind of like sparked some controversy and stuff.
Right.
And I think that it's like it's the perfect and like a little too real of an experience sometimes when you're watching She-Hulk as like a woman or a person who is not a cis man. Like these things happen so often, and like maybe not necessarily on such a grand stage, but like you're with her in that moment when she starts raging and she loses control, she's had to keep her control this whole time. She's been so good at it. And like, this is the kind of stuff that breaks you. So yeah, I thought it was a great example of the deep horror of what can happen when you're doxxed in that way. And I'm really excited to see She-Hulk beat the crap out of this guy.
Well, and to your point about like pulling from real life, like a few episodes back when they had the string of tweets about people complaining about She-Hulk. I mean, I alluded to it earlier about like, the people who call it the MCU and dismissively react to any kind of representation when it's not a straight cis white guy playing a superhero. And some of those comments probably were verbatim from things that were, pulled directly off Twitter. You know what I mean? Like, to your point about like the realism of that experience, seeing her, watching that video and the horror on Jen's face, like, yeah, I mean, it's maybe a little too real sometimes.
But it is the perfect place for the Hulk show to go. That's one thing I like about it. Like, it's a controlling metaphor for the show. It's the problem introduced in the first episode. How do you control your rage? Well, I have this kind of rage, and you have that kind of rage, and they have different flavors in the world. So I did like the symmetry of that it comes to, well, what would make this She-Hulk really spike with rage? And it's a different kind of thing, maybe outside some people's experience, but it's like a very real experience. And I kind of wish she had destroyed more buildings just to prove the point, but maybe she will in the next episode.
I wanted to ask you, Dom, you mentioned that there is an aspect of the show that you're still wrestling with. And I know that you've mentioned in the past that part of the issue with each episode of She-Hulk is that she's rarely the center of those episodes, and even this one until the end, like, they again, right, being fourth wall breaking, they make a point of like, oh, I thought it was over, you came just for Daredevil, why are you still here, right. and then we finally got some actual She-Hulk stuff at the end, but 90% of this episode was about Daredevil. I'm assuming that's what you're.
Yeah, I love the Daredevil part, but I am in favor of when they zero back in on She-Hulk, because I think that's one of the problems. And also, okay, I'm just going to rant a little bit about like zeroing in on the problems I have with She-Hulk. The fourth wall breaking, too much. You're doing that way too much. It's like, you should do it when it's funny. You shouldn't do it when it's like, oh, well, now I'm on page 18 and now here's the part where you read page 19. That's a little cheap. And I don't know, I'm just, okay. And most of my issues with the show have been, there's something sort of loosey-goosey about the writing. And I rewatched a few episodes. I just gotta say, I may sound like an asshole, but the part that really bugs me is when she's speed dating and she turns the camera and says, is there anything worse than dating in your 30s? Is there anything worse than dating in your 30s? Okay, I realize some people actually say that, but there are lots of things worse than dating in your 30s. That puts it at a very certain level of people have a specific problem set, like dating in your 40s, dating in your 50s, and basically every year after dating in your 30s. So there's something about this. Maybe you could get a few people with a little bit more life experience in the writing room, because that was very revealing to me. But that's just me. I'm an old fogey.
One, I thought we were getting 8 episodes. I thought Daredevil was the finale, so I'm actually surprised there's one more episode. So I was like, Jen at the end, like, oh, why am I still here? I thought this was it.
Oh, yeah, what the hell was that? That was like the clumsiest, like, fourth wall pivot to me. It's like, just find a way to transition to the final scene, which turns out to be the most important scene as far as She-Hulk's, arc in the story. And every time she does that, it's like, I don't know if you're invested in your own story. Anyway, I'll stop complaining. This is the part of the podcast where I complain, and then I try to play it off.
Yeah. Well, let's take a break. And on the other side of the break, I want to talk about 2 other things that came on Disney Plus, and one of the reasons, Katrina, why I asked you to be on the show is as I mentioned in the intro, you used to host a podcast called Itu Banta Tambien, which is, I am assuming, a play on a very famous movie from the 90s.
It is indeed, yeah.
Starring 2 young actors at the time. They were teenagers, I think.
Yeah, up and comers.
Diego Luna and Gael Garcia Bernal. Who knew nearly 3 decades later they would star in 2 of the best stuff on Disney Plus. So after the break, we're going to talk about Andor and Werewolf by Night. Guess what? Goalie Nutrition is sponsoring Hard Knock Life, and you can go to goalie.com to buy apple cider vinegar gummies, their ashwagandha gummies, superfruit gummies, and super greens gummies, and get 10% off plus free shipping if you use the code HARDKNOCK at goalie.com. This is honestly, I've been taking the Goalie gummies now for a couple weeks, and I have to say, they're tasty and they're good for you. Have you guys been enjoying the Goalie gummies?
I really like them. They're yummy, but it's a nice to add to my routine of already I normally take just straight vitamin C, so it's nice to have extra supplements.
For a long time, people have praise the benefits of apple cider vinegar. And, you know, as someone who's had to like drink straight apple cider vinegar sometimes when I'm not feeling well, or, you know, I have some joint pain and your mom was like, drink some apple cider vinegar. It's not the most appetizing home remedy, let's just say.
No,
Right.
it tastes horrible.
Like the apple cider part is like, ooh, does it taste like apple cider? And it's like, no, it tastes like vinegar. But ACV is very good for you. And the fact that Goli has been able to put the ACV into these tasty little gummies made with pectin and fruit peels, which make them vegan, which is cool. So if you're vegan, you can still rock these gummies, because everyone knows gummies are usually made out of like gelatin and nasty shit. These are made out of complete non-GMO, gelatin-free, gluten-free, vegan ingredients, and you can get the benefits, all of the benefits of apple cider vinegar, taking these tasty, delicious, convenient gummies. So go to Goli.com and use the code HARDKNOCK, that's HARDNOC, just like the podcast you're listening to. Get 10% off your purchase of Goli products and free shipping.
It's a much better delivery device for that apple cider vinegar.
Yeah.
These Goli gummies are great. You get
I
it, and it's
agree
a
100.
delicious little candy. And I've been enjoying the Superfruits one. I did feel kind of refreshed after taking a few of those.
Yeah, no, but I'm loving them so far, and they're definitely tasty. If you just want tasty gummies, at least just eat them for the yumminess.
Yeah. So go to Goli.com, use the code HARDKNOCK, HARDNOC, get 10% off your purchase and free shipping at Goli.com with the code HARDKNOCK. Well, let's start with Werewolf by Night. It is October, it is the spooky season. And what better time to have a black and white Hammer horror movie inspired? Was it a short film? Was it a TV movie? I don't even know.
Special.
TV special? Yeah, they had the the old school, like, you know, a special presentation intro.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be straight up. I didn't think I was going to like this. I thought it was going to be like a cheesy, corny thing. The trailer made it feel like kind of corny, honestly, in my opinion. But holy shit. What do you think of Werewolf by Night? I know what Brittany thinks of Werewolf by Night. I can see it on her face, and she's been itching to talk about this for weeks now. But since you're our special guest, Katrina, what were your thoughts on Werewolf by Night?
I've been a fan of Gael Garcia Bernal for years and years. I was very lucky to work on the marketing campaign for Mozart in the Jungle, which he starred in about 8 years ago, I want to say.
Has it been that long?
It's been a hot minute. And he's one of those guys where my quartet of Latino actors that I absolutely love, Oscar Isaac, Pedro Pascal, and Diego Luna, and Gael Garcia Bernal.
4 for 4 on the Disney clean sweep.
Mhm.
Exactly. I just keep winning, honestly. I have really good taste in favorite people. And so to see him meeting this was really exciting. And I'm very glad that I don't know, when I watched the trailer, it seemed really serious. And he's a great dramatic actor. You've seen anything he's been in, he's great. But he's also extremely funny. He's got great comedic timing. And so I was really excited to see them kind of explore that duality of his acting. And so I was super excited. I really loved they incorporated the face paint that he used for Dia de los Muertos. I loved it. So yeah.
Cool. Brittany, you've been itching to talk about this for a long. You even started watching old Universal horror movies to get ready for Werewolf by Night. What did you think of the final product?
It was perfect. I really loved it. It was so much fun. I even loved that they digitally added on the little pop when they used to edit old film together and have that little thing in
The
corner,
cigarette burns. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I
indeed.
loved that, and just the music was just great. And obviously, because Michael, he directed and did the music, and
Yeah.
everything was just it really all went well together, and it really felt like this was a really thought out project. And I'm just I want more of this from the MCU. It was so much fun. I don't know. I've watched it twice already, and that's sort of also kind of my nerd popping, because nothing else to me is topped Werewolf by Night this week. So I don't know. It was great. I loved it, and I loved the chemistry between Gail and is her name Laura?
Donnelly,
actress?
yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
I think I remembered from the trailer that it wasn't her, but I have to admit, they cast an actress who looks so much like Kristen Ritter that for a second I was
I kept forgetting, and every time I looked at her, I was wait, no, she's already Jessica Jones.
yeah, it's is Jessica
No.
Jones in this?
See, I thought she was what's her face from Breaking Bad for a second.
That's the
Who's also
same. That's the same actress.
Laura, no, it is not. She's not the Laura who's in Breaking Bad. Who is what's her face? The skittish woman from the final season. Guys
Oh.
of right. Oh, I'm sorry. Kristen Ritter is awesome.
Yeah, you're right.
I
No,
thought
that's
it
what I
was
was
the
like.
other-
Kristen Ritter was
It's
totally
Kristen
Breaking Bad.
Ritter and this woman whose name I'm not remembering in the final season. You know, she's the one who. This is a tangent. She's the one who also always has to have stevia and is really skittish. And eventually,
I mean,
you
it's
know,
been so
Walt kills
long,
her
I
with right-
can't remember.
Anyway, I thought they were.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought she was merged of those two people from Breaking Bad,
Well,
and she's
all-
not either of them.
All
Doesn't
white
matter.
women look the same.
No, that's not my point. But she does have that dark hair, like
But she does look. I mean, I wasn't the only one who thought she looked like Kristen Ritter, at least,
No,
right? Like,
absolutely. I
Yeah.
definitely thought she looked like Kristen Ritter. One of the things I do want to bring up is like I know that they were going through it for a Twilight Zone effect, but like it really, really like surprised me the detail and the lighting that they used throughout this. Like
Mhm.
it looks so naturally like it belongs in like a much older time period, and then we kind of realize and find out that it absolutely is not an older time period.
Yeah.
So I love the way they did that because I was very fully immersed in this being like classic horror, and then they were like, no, it's today.
Right. Well, that's why, one of the things Katrina, we speculated when they announced they were doing this Werewolf by Night special, I think at D23, and they showed the trailer. I remember my speculation was like, maybe this is like a movie in the MCU, kind of like Rogers the Musical that people are going to see, that it's not actually like in the continuity. Because to your point, like the trailer made me think that this takes place 200 years ago, right? Like just the way that, the kind of like ornate and, Gothic architecture of the castle and just the way they talked, it was like very much like, oh, this must be set 200 years ago or whatever. So for them to start off with like, remember the Avengers, this is happening at the same time. I'm like, what? But the actual special itself plays out more kind of quote unquote realistically than the trailers made it seem. Like I said, I thought it was going to be very kind of like stiff and like kind of campy almost, right? But they played it straight throughout, and that was to me very surprising. I wasn't expecting that.
it was really well directed. And again, you mentioned that it's Michael Giacchino directing, but he's mainly known as a composer, right? He did that great Batman theme. So it was nice to see that it has a certain musicality that informs the whole show. I was happy to see Elsa Bloodstone, played by that Laura, who's not the other Laura, and because she's a good character in one of the video games. And I was just always really happy to see Man Thing, because Man Thing is my thing, man. I mean,
yeah. I definitely wanted to talk about Ted. They showed a flash of Man Thing in the trailer, and I think people were like speculating, is like, Man Thing really going to be in this? Not only is Man Thing in this, he's the best. No shade to Gail and Laura. Ted's the best thing in this special, like bar none. The best scene. Well, I have two favorite scenes from this. One of my favorite scenes is when, to your point about Michael Giacchino's directing, when we see Jack transform into the werewolf for the first time, he stays on her and her reaction, and you see maybe like a digitally animated shadow in the background of Jack turning into the werewolf, but you stay on her, and that really sold the horror of seeing a man turn into a werewolf. We didn't need to actually see it for it to be effective. But my favorite scene in the whole thing, I'm gonna call it a movie, I don't care. My favorite thing in the whole movie is that when Man Thing shows up, he disintegrates one of the other hunters, and Elsa says, "Ted," and the look, he's so adorable. Like he just deflates, and it's like when Christopher Reeve turns into like Clark Kent from being Superman. Like you can totally see the duality in his portrayal. That bar none, best scene in the whole thing. So I know stylistically why they decided to do this in black and white. To your point about like having it echo the old classic Universal monsters and Hammer horror. But the other reason I think is that you get away with more gore when it's in black and white. And this was, if this was in color, this would be totally TVMA.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because you were worried about it not being as bloody, because we were kind of let down by Moon Knight. We were expecting Moon Knight to be this like really vicious, brutal show, and turned out not so much. But this one, again, if it was in color, this would be pretty graphic.
Like the pin through his chin and face, man, like that. That was like really graphic. for a Marvel joint, at least, like I definitely agree that like, but the one thing I will say is that like a lot of our dear reviewers out there were saying like, this is super scary. It's legitimately gory and scary. And I'm like, well, I put it at a PG-13. Like, it's not
Yeah.
like I was like, I watched it during the daytime because I was scared. Like,
You could have totally watched it at night. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
But-
you can really,
But like, have you
watch
even
something
seen
at night by
Jessica
yourself.
Jones and Daredevil back on Netflix? Just to bring it back to that.
Yeah,
That shit was gory.
yeah, there's way scarier, gorier things out there. Like it was gory for yes, a Marvel joint, but also like after Doctor Strange, like we saw somebody's like head get snapped off. So I
guess
definitely like
so.
I agree that like this was properly gory, but like it wasn't as scary and gory as I thought it would be.
Mm.
Which is not a bad thing. Really,
Yeah. No, I mean, I was surprised when it loaded on what was it, Wednesday or Thursday, and it was TV 14. I wasn't expecting that. I thought it would be TV. I thought it was going to be part of like the now we have mature stuff, and the fact that it was TV 14, it was like, oh, that's surprising. But then the content of it was like, oh, like you can disintegrate a guy and you can like blood splatter on the camera as long as it's black and not red. And then and which was also interesting to your point about like people speculating about things on the internet. There's all this kind of like fan theory about why does the Bloodstone turn everything to color at the end, and I think that's more of a stylistic choice on the director's part. I don't think I don't think they were living in a black and white world until the Bloodstone
No.
colorized. This isn't Pleasantville.
I liked it. Like you said, I thought it was a nice stylistic choice, and especially playing Judy Garland, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Like, I don't know, it was just, I felt it was all, everything to me felt very well done and well thought out. Like it was great. And like I said, I want more of this.
I think that's the other question. We talked last week about the production delays for Blade,
Mhm.
but we have Blade coming. We have Moon Knight already. Was that 2/3 of the way to the Midnight Suns, and now we have Man Thing and Werewolf by Night. Don't they have like a League of Monsters or something like that? Isn't that another team in the Marvel
In
comics?
Marvel? Yeah, they've had a League of Monsters at some
Right.
point. I'm not remembering the exact year, but
Unfortunately, Morbius is Morbin over in the Sony universe. We can't have Morbius.
yeah, Morbius can stay where he is. Yeah.
Do you think, like, to Brittany's point, like this is not the last we're going to see of Jack Russell and Ted the Man Thing?
Oh yeah, I'm very sure we're gonna see them again. Like I see that obvious team up with Moon Knight. Like they're just of the same genre, and we'd probably get bloodier stuff that people want. And yeah, I mean, like with the Defenders coming together, like Man Thing hung out with them for a hot second. Like there's a lot of ways this can go. So I don't think this is by far the last time we're going to see those two.
And Brittany's been advocating very loudly over the last several months to bring back Gabriel Luna as Robbie Reyes, Ghost
Yes.
Rider. I mean, if we include Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the greater MC multiverse, I think the last time we saw him, he had the Darkhold.
Mhm.
Could we figure a way? If we're bringing back Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart and Tobey Maguire, we can bring back Gabriel Luna.
Yeah, I feel like it works. Like I said, he was so great, and I still hold that he should get a really badass R-rated film. That I still say Antoine Fuqua would be the dude for it, and I still think also Antoine Fuqua would be the great person for Blade. Like I feel like those characters are like.
Why don't you just
right up his
introduce
alley.
Ghost Rider in Blade?
Exactly. It would be. I don't know. I feel like Marvel needs to listen to me for once. Like, do it. Because I don't think they realize that Werewolf by Night might be the best thing they've done in Phase 4 so far. And I don't know, maybe Wakanda Forever might dethrone it, but I don't know. I'm really like here for Werewolf by Night. I think it's the best thing that they've done in a long time.
Yeah, I was surprisingly, again, I went in kind of like low expectations. I was like, oh, what is this? I wonder what this is. I don't really know a lot about Werewolf by Night as a character. I didn't think Man Thing would be that prominent. I thought, honestly, when they show a flash in the trailer, I just thought like, it would just be that. It'd be a cameo at best. I didn't think he would be an actual character in the show. So I agree. It's probably my favorite thing of this phase, like by a long mile. Can't even think of anything else in Phase 4 I liked as much as World. And it probably helped that it was a 55-minute special. Because one of the problems with the Marvel shows is that they start off hot, kind of trail off after like 3 or 4 episodes, and maybe come back hot. And I think like this was a tight 55 minutes.
Yeah, it was very compact, like a issue of a comic book, like one of those single issues. Not like the event 12-issue storylines. It was like the single double-sized maybe issue of a comic book that you can pick up in its whole story. That was a nice thing about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's venture out of the Marvel universe and head to that galaxy far, far away. Another reason why I wanted Katrina here is that, I think you are synonymous with the Star Wars universe, I think is fair to say. No Asajj Ventress in this just yet, but
we've gotten pretty far without me taking up the mantle and starting to mention her. So,
I didn't want to.
So far we'll get.
But speaking of some of the best content in a while, I feel like, what are we, 5 episodes into Andor?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best Star Wars content that we've gotten, I think, since season 1 of The Mandalorian.
Yeah,
we haven't seen anything in the Star Wars universe as good as Andor so far. So, Katrina, I want, as our resident Star Wars guest, what was your take on not just this most recent episode, but so far what you've seen of Andor? And you got to go viral, like, with some of your questions with the Andor cast too, by the way.
Yeah, that was really cool. I tweeted that thing about Big Sat, and then the Star Wars account popped into my DMs, and they were like, "Hey, can we use this for a thing?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" Yeah, go for it. And then lo and behold, this pops up one day, and it was just really cool to hear Adria say my name, which is just really nice. Yeah, so I've been excited to a fault in a way for this series for a really long time, and just to see it unfolding the way it's unfolding has been so satisfying, because yes, this is some of the best content we've gotten in Star Wars in a long time. But when I think of why I like Andor, I think it's the same reasons why I like Rebels. I feel like Rebels gets dismissed a lot as it's another Jedi story, but it's a much bigger story than Ezra and Kanan. They are participants in this story, and they're having a Jedi subplot, but it is not in any way about them as Jedi. It's about this rebellion that is building up in cells, and it's one perspective that we get from one rebel cell. And so I was thinking a lot about the crew of the Ghost while we were watching Cassian's cell interact and develop, and we got to know them a lot this last episode. I was like, there are so many stark differences between the way Hera's cell works versus Vel's. So I'm really interested. This last episode was just full of banger lines, really great character moments. It's the episode that has made me so afraid for the next episode when some of these people might die. So I'm really excited, and undeniably Diego Luna has just been kicking ass every single episode of
Yeah.
this series. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the world is long for. I call him Mouse because he reminds me of Mouse from The Matrix, but he's the young kid who we learned this episode. Not only is he a true believer, he's written a manifesto now. You know what I mean? Which may be part of the uniting force behind what really brings the Alliance together. Because just when he was about to share his manifesto, I was like, oh yeah, he's not gonna make it. I have a feeling he's not gonna make it. No, I absolutely agree. And this part of the premise of the show is how do all of these random factions come together? And I love that they're following Mon Mothma, and she's I mentioned this last week. One of the things I'm appreciating so much is just kind of seeing the mundaneness of the Empire, right? You're seeing Imperial officers just bickering in the office, and you're seeing Mon Mothma be a mom to a really terrible daughter so far. At least I don't know her backstory, but I'm someone smack that girl. And then with a jackass husband too, right? That's never in a million years would have I thought of what's Mon Mothma's home life like. When she's talking about dead Bothans. And now I'm I want a whole show about their marriage, because it's just to me so fascinating.
He is definitely an asshole.
With a stupid little man bun.
I know, and I love that they reiterated that he is, because he keeps asking what her driver's name is, and it's not that hard of a name to forget. It was just a name where it's I don't know how many times she has to tell you, dude. I don't know. But
he's too good. He's too good to remember his name.
Yeah, exactly. I know a lot of people don't like the kid, but I don't necessarily. I feel like she is an unfortunate pawn in the middle of the game that this man is trying to play with Mon Mothma.
Yeah.
Like he's clearly he's the one who's around all day because he doesn't have a job. He put these ideas into her head while her mom, who's away and busy and secretly building a rebellion, like isn't around to like influence her and show her that she loves her in any way. So I mean, like the ultimately, like not to get too deep on Kylo Ren, but like and not to say that Han and Leia were necessarily absent parents, but the lack of attention he got in certain ways contributed to why he was so easily manipulated. Not, I wouldn't say why he became evil, because that is way too compartmentalizing what happened, but like I'm interested in seeing this portrayal of childhood neglect, and that is why I don't want to necessarily like call the kid like,
yeah, I know. I'm
like she's being bratty.
I was gonna
like,
say maybe I was just triggered as a dad to a teenage daughter. Maybe I was triggered a little bit in that scene.
Oh no, it's yeah. Like my first thought was like, oh my god, he sat in her room and talked shit about Mon.
Oh, I'm sure that's 100%, 100%. And to your point about Han and Leia being absent, but they may not have been absentee parents, but they did send Kylo off to a boarding school, even if it was with his uncle. So
yeah, that's a really deep conversation to get into forever and ever. But like in this particular like moment, I see Mon Mothma's husband taking advantage of things to make her life harder on purpose.
Oh, for sure. And we didn't even talk about Cyro and his mom. I did love the symmetry of moms in this episode, by the way.
That's curious because I'm not sure like how much we're gonna follow that guy. I mean, like maybe he actually ends up joining the rebellion instead of becoming this, like imperial officer dude. That's a curious question mark to me. I really like Kel's Magnificent Seven group, and I agree with you that we're probably invested in them. Fortunate to how many of them are going to die in the next episode. And I really like, this is superficial, but like I like Kel because doesn't she seem like she should be like in Rings of Power over in the Tolkien universe or something? It's because she's always walking with the staff and has like the elf eyes, but like I just find like her a very appealing character. Yeah,
They have Cocoa Puffs. That's cool.
and they have Cocoa Puffs, right? I mean, that was precious. So, where does that drive confused guy? Towards the rebellion or towards the empire? If you have to sit with your mom and eat Cocoa Puffs for the rest of your life.
Maybe the rebellion,
Can I ask, because what was YouTube the Tambien about? Just because I was curious since I heard the title.
Yeah, so the title is a play on the film Y Tu Mama Tambien,
Yeah.
which starred Diego and Gail. And it was just like, a little nerdy podcast with me and my friend Kayla Maria Gisela, who is currently in the...
Speaking of Rings of Power.
Yeah, speaking of Rings of Power, that's the one of the social media managers on that particular thing, which is why between her busy life and me being busy assisting her, we've just been a little too stopped up. So yeah, so we're we still podcast when we can, but like it's more like two friends are getting together and now we're talking about nerdy stuff together from our perspective. It's a little more unique than other perspectives, but not all of them.
But it was pretty Star Wars focused though, right? Like
yeah. Well, and at the time we were running that podcast, there was a lot of Star Wars. Like that was 2015 to 2017. So we had new Star Wars stuff coming out in movies. We had new TV shows. We had new video games at that time. There were conventions going on that we went to all the time. And so, yeah, and that was like, it was great. We got to interview like some really great people. And because of that podcast, we got so many great opportunities. So it's kind of nice when we do get to come back, like every, couple months, I'll like bring up Kayla or she'll call me up and go like, hey, this thing happened. Do you want to talk about it? And we can just like slide right back into it. And it's nice. It's like, when you reconnect with your friends, nothing can go wrong really.
But I do find it ironic that like, after you guys kind of like, stop podcasting as frequently, like then we got Pedro Pascal as the Mandalorian. Then we got Diego Luna as Cassian Andor, and like this show, it just like the representation kind of like went up a notch, and it was like, I want to hear what like Kyla and Katrina.
But we got really busy, and like I have a podcast all about Pedro Pascal.
That's right.
Pedro Pascal, which is super great. But like I feel like if I were to make a like general nerd podcast, it's Kayla that I'd want to do it with. It's, Sarah Rodriguez, who I used to have a really great podcast called Rebel Base with. Later on, we called it Woman Up. And yeah, like, I mean, I love talking with other like women and non-binary folks about this kind of stuff, especially, you know, women of color who have, you know, like I'm Latina, but like, come on. So I love listening to perspectives that are not mine, because there's just like, there's so much you can learn and so many beautiful things that people like experience that make things richer. So I'm really thankful that I've gotten to do that with like a lot of my podcast hosts.
Yeah. Well, thank you for gracing our rinky dink little podcast, because
Shut up. Oh my God. No. See, back when we were running Itu Banta and you guys were having Comic-Con parties, we were like, we're the guys that we have to.
well,
hang
you know,
out
and
with.
you know, I remember speaking at one of those Comic-Con parties about like bringing Itu Banta into the
Yeah.
network. But you know, that's why I'm glad to finally have you now. Before we wrap up, one thing I want to do is go around the horn and ask everyone what's nerd popping. What's the thing that you're like either most excited about, or you know, just caught your attention this week? And so for you, as our lovely guest, you get to go first. What's nerd popping in the world of Katrina Dennis?
My nerd poppin' thing is a brag. The trailer for Picard season 3 came out. This
That's right. This is New York Comic Con weekend, by the way.
It's New York Comic Con week. Like, go watch the trailers for The Peripheral and the new Legend of Vox Machina Eclipse. Please give me views. But on the flip side, over at the Star Trek panel, the Picard season 3 trailer was released, and there is a ship in that season 3 trailer that is the Enterprise F. It is an Odyssey class starship from Star Trek Online, and it was created by my boyfriend Thomas Maroney.
Oh,
So
wow.
Now he has officially gone from like being a game Trek artist to an official Star Trek ship designer, and so like that's what's popping and nerdy for me.
That's awesome.
Oh wait, so it's a ship in the new Picard series?
Yeah, that new, if you watch the trailer, there's like a 2-second clip of the ship like coming toward the camera and kind of flying away. And that is the Odyssey class, the Enterprise.
Awesome. I love when they come out with the new Enterprise.
Even
Always
the
a
trailer
thrill.
doesn't really give a lot of story details, but like, are they on? They're not on the Enterprise though, are they? Or can you not say?
I don't know, actually.
Who knows what ship they're on? They're on a ship. I don't know if it's an
They're on
Enterprise or
a
not.
ship. Like there was like a teaser back at Star Trek Day last month where like 7 of 9 was like commandeering a ship, and I think, please don't quote me, like,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry if I'm wrong about this. I believe that's the Titan A, and if not, she has a ship
Right.
that like
Not the
Picard
Titan
in that
AE?
teaser, yeah, he gets in, and so I don't know where they are, but my hot guess is that at first they at least get on her ship.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for those who may not know, Picard season 3, which is the final season of the Picard show, is essentially also Star Trek: The Next Generation season 8, because like they brought back literally everyone. And if you watch the teaser trailer, even Brent Spiner, because he wasn't announced when they first said, like, you know, Gates McFadden and LeVar Burton and Michael Dorn, they're all coming back. No one said anything about Brent Spiner because, you know, Data has been put to rest finally and forever. But not Lore, apparently. So that's who's back.
Still around, yeah. I'm excited because like we've seen Brett Spiner like hitting up conventions and stuff all year. So that means he's been keeping that secret from everyone. So, and I'm also excited, just like on that note, I'm excited to see LeVar Burton's daughter, Mika Burton, is coming in to play his daughter.
That's
Jordan
right.
has 2 daughters in the series, and Mika is one of them. So I'm really excited about that because Mika's one of my favorite cosplayers.
That's awesome. Brittany, I know you said you didn't have any nerd popping, but last week you wanted to talk about Hocus Pocus. So
Ooh.
Oh yes, Hocus Pocus 2. It was, you know, I felt like it was good, but I wanted a little bit more evil from Tony Hale, actually. I felt like that was my biggest complaint of the film, was like they really should have just went all in and made Tony Hale actually be the same dude from that time, and he's evil. And I don't know, I just wanted a little bit more of the Sanderson sisters while also like introducing a new generation. I feel like they're trying to set up maybe a new series that would be in, like, say, the Hocus Pocus universe, but maybe not directly Hocus Pocus. That's what I feel like they were maybe going for. And they were like,
with like the teenagers.
yeah, but I still liked it. It was fun. I don't know, Hocus Pocus, and is always going to be one of my favorite things. Like, I thought I could totally marry Thackeray Binks, even though he was a ghost and kind of a cat. Like, I thought it was possible as a kid, you know? But
And that's a movie you probably no one ever thought there would be a sequel to, and just took 30 years, you know?
yeah.
Dominic, what's nerd popping?
Just another detail from the Black Panther 2 trailer that I don't think we mentioned. It was really nice to see a glimpse of Ironheart's armor
That's right.
because like it's kind of like a little Gundam Evangelion looking. Like, you know, I love that stuff. And again, just speaking to like, there's a lot of goofy comic book stuff going on in this movie. There's the guy with ankle wings, there's geopolitics, and there's also got to be someone with a super iron tech suit. But Coogler can take all those goofy comic book things and make it work. It was great to see all those things weirdly juxtaposed in the trailer.
Yeah.
And Keith, yourself?
Yeah. Well, I'll just add to the Ironheart thing. If you are an action figure collector, you know more than just a glimpse of the Ironheart suit, because Hasbro has already released the Ironheart figure in stores, so you can find the MCU version of Ironheart in stores. And yeah, it is very much mecha anime inspired when it comes to, because I feel like Ironheart in the comics is much more like a streamlined armor, and in this one she's like
Yeah.
in a
No, I
mech
love
suit,
that.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think she has a couple different suits, but this one definitely seems to have a strong mecha anime inspired look, and that shit is cool.
Yeah.
I hope it has like the little missiles that shoot out, and there's like dozens of cauliflower missiles. Anyway, I could go on and on.
So for me, what's nerd popping? I'm going to take it to the other side of the big two. We've been talking a lot about Marvel on this episode, so I'm going to take it back to DC for a hot second. And a couple of things, since Katrina mentioned New York Comic Con, they released a couple of clips and teasers for Doom Patrol and Titans. And the one thing I just want to say for Titans, they revealed Titus Welliver as Lex Luthor. If you don't remember Titus Welliver, he was the Man in Black on Lost, and he had his own show on Amazon called Bosch.
Bosh. He was also in The Mandalorian season 3. He was or season 2.
Oh, he was one of the officers.
the officer who took the cyanide pill. Yeah.
Yeah, who was when Din had to take his helmet off. So he is now Lex Luthor in the Titans universe. And what I don't understand about the TV versions of Lex Luthor is like he's bald, but he's got a beard. Because if you remember on Supergirl, John Cryer had a beard when he was Lex Luthor, and now Titus Welliver has like a big old bushy beard. And I just don't understand why Lex Luthor has to have facial hair, because I thought the whole point of Lex Luthor, anyway. But he looks really cool as Lex Luthor.
Are you working out some feelings about guys'
Well,
facial hair?
as
Keith?
someone who cannot grow facial hair, I'm a little jealous that
I'm
the
with you.
bald guy gets facial hair. But the thing I did want to talk about briefly, speaking of DC, is that there is this rumor going around ever since a few fan screenings of Black Adam in Mexico that in the movie, Henry Cavill, Instagrams and tweets where it's like sounds like he's confirming that Superman is in it without saying Superman. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not the hugest Snyder Cut fan. I thought Snyder Cut was fine, but I'm a little excited that Henry Cavill might be coming back as Superman. Am I weird?
You said you don't want him to come back?
No, that I do want Henry to come back.
Okay.
Yeah, like I'm actually like, I don't want to get my hopes up, because if you remember, there are all these rumors that Henry Cavill was going to show up at Comic-Con during the DC panel, and he was nowhere to be found. But
they also said he was going to be announced as what was it?
I thought he was going to be playing
Right.
Doctor Doom. All those rumors were not the case.
I did
Sure.
think, speaking of Doctor Doom real quick, I did think when the people in Werewolf by Night were walking in with the metal masks in the hoods, the eyes wide shut, like ritual thing, I was like, Doctor Doom reference. He looks a little Doctor Doomy over there. But anyway, yeah, Henry Cavill as Superman, and someone like leaked a bunch of photos from when Man of Steel was like doing costume tests, and they show like Henry in like, proto versions of the Superman costume from Man of Steel. Anyway, Henry's like all over the place on the internet, at least in my corner of the internet. I'm seeing a lot of Henry Cavill, and I'm hearing a lot of stuff about him coming back as Superman. But I guess the question to you guys, and there is various appreciation or lack thereof of the previous version of the DCEU, but like, I feel like Henry Cavill never really got a chance to play Superman. So if they do bring him back, at least I'm excited to give him a shot to actually play Superman and not like, Homelander, essentially. Right? Like that's what we've gotten so far.
Yeah. And I mean, like, Henry Cavill he's still the actor I think that could be a great Superman. I just feel like he hasn't gotten the writer that can bring out like that boyish charm that we know is already part of him, because he like sits around and builds computers on the internet. like a big old dorky dork.
He's a
So-
super nerd. Like lean
Yeah,
into
he's a
that.
huge nerd. He's got a very lighthearted side to him. Like it's not a secret what his personality is like. And so like I think he's still he is a great Superman. He just needs a great Superman writer. and
Absolutely.
director.
And I said this on Twitter. Speaking of like leaning into like Henry Cavill's natural gifts, right? Like, yes, lean into the fact that he's a big dork already. So like use that for his Clark Kent, but also stop slicking his hair back. Because have you seen Henry Cavill's natural hair? He
Yeah, he has
has
a
the S
curl.
curl, like naturally. You don't have to like do any CGI or any kind of wig. Just let him wear his hair the way it normally is. And he's got the freaking Superman S curl. But they always slick his hair back in the movie. So if he is indeed coming back, Dwayne Johnson, I implore you, because you're clearly the Kevin Feige of the DC universe, if this is true. Let Henry wear his hair naturally, because he already looks like Superman.
Mhm.
Yeah, so my nerd popping's all about, DC characters' hair. Apparently, that's what's nerd popping for me. Anyway, that's Hard Knock Life. Katrina Dennis, how can people find you on the internet?
You can find me anywhere if you look for OHCATRINA, Katrina, on social media. You can also tune into any of my many podcasts, especially the 3 that are running right now, which are Pedro Pascal, which I co-host with Rachel Leishman, a podcast about Pedro Pascal's filmography. You can also tune into What's Fluff, which is launching later in November, a podcast about talking to folks and interviewing them about their favorite characters and the things they love about Star Wars. And if you're feeling a little combative, you can also tune into a Fight Club Far, Far Away, where I break down the greatest fights in Star Wars with the professionals who helped make them. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Brittany Monet, how can people find you?
You can find me at Hi Brittany Monet, both on Twitter and Instagram. And you can check out at Lit Crew _podcast. I'm so bad at not knowing my own podcast's other handle. But yeah, you can just see all my crazy tweets and whatnot.
Dominic Ma.
I'm Dominic Ma on Instagram or Twitter, the Dama, DOMMAH.
You can find me on Twitter at The Real Chow. That's the_real_chow. And on Instagram at Real Keith Chow. Follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color and go to hardknockmedia.com to find this and all the podcasts in the Hard Knock Network. Give us a rating and a review if you do. Find our videos at youtube.com/the Nerds of Color. Like and subscribe there. Support us on patreon.com/the Nerds of Color. And you can buy our merch at TeePublic. That is the Nerds of Color. This is Hard Knock Life. And until next time,
Jack Russell rules.
Jack Russell does roll. And I never realized that Werewolf by Night is named Jack Russell.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. But that is like in the comic, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the funniest thing in the world? Like,
Yeah. He
Jack
transforms into a cute little dog.
That would be the best if he actually transformed into a Jack Russell Terrier. I'm trying to find who the other Laura in Breaking Bad was.
I just looked
can
just
kinda
looked
see
it up too, dude. We're on the same like
Yeah. Laura Free.
Lydia. It was Lydia.
Yeah, now I
remember Lydia?
Yeah.
I like that. I like that character. Anyway,
Sorry for the
neither Lydia nor Kristen Ritter are Elsa Bloodstone in this show. Just to be clear.